Summer is here, the world is open for the most part at least, and I'm going to tell you where you can travel to and where not. Let's get started with this video. It's an interesting one because the world was closed for a pretty long time. Now the countries are opening up, people want to travel again. They want to travel without restrictions, and I thought it was going to be helpful if I share with you the places that are open and the places that are closed. So if we take a look here, and I'm using Kayak for that, and what's interesting is you can select here whether you're fully vaccinated or unvaccinated. Based on the information that I'm getting from Kayak, in case I'm fully vaccinated and I'm departing from the United States, so you can enter the country you're traveling from and traveling to anywhere, we can see that a total of 155 countries are open to fully vaccinated travelers, and that means no COVID testing, no quarantine is required, which is fantastic news. 41 countries are open for travel with required COVID testing. That means if you're fully vaccinated, you need to get a COVID test done in order to visit the 41 countries that are listed right here. 5 countries require test and quarantine, and we have a total of 26 countries that are still closed despite of vaccination status. We see whole Latin America is open, with the exception of French Guiana. No idea why that country is still closed, maybe some political glitch. And we can see that Nicaragua is really the only country that still requires a negative test, and Guyana too. Other than that, all Latin countries are open for travel. All of them are open, which is fantastic. We can see that Europe is open, with the exception of Portugal still requiring a negative test for travelers from the United States. Other than that, whole Europe is open. Africa, open for the most part. Southeast Asia, a region that was very closed, is finally welcoming tourists again without any of the tedious paperwork that people got done during the pandemic. During the past 2 years, now it's pretty easy to travel to Southeast Asia. We see that a country like Thailand is fully open, and starting July 1st, Thailand will remove the test and go program, meaning no test is required, no quarantine. So it will be a much easier time to travel to the kingdom again. And we see that in Vietnam, you can travel to Vietnam, no testing, no vaccine, nothing is required. So really, really cool indeed. So if you're fully vaccinated, you have it pretty easy because you can also get onto planes, you can get onto ships, right? You can travel by air, you can travel by land, you can travel by ship, right? It's pretty easy for you. So if you're fully vaccinated, the world is your oyster again. It's pretty easy. You can go to pretty much any place with the exception of China, Taiwan. I think Taiwan is about to open up again. China is closed, has nothing to do with COVID, has to do with political glitches going on in the country. They want to remain strict, tight control over their citizens, over their residents, and over whoever enters the country. So I don't see China dropping the zero COVID policy anytime soon. We can expect this to continue. For how long, I have no idea. It could be for a couple more years before China welcomes tourists again. It's really difficult to say. How does it look if you're not fully vaccinated? Maybe for medical reasons, maybe for personal reasons, you decided to not get the jab. Maybe you didn't get the booster. Whatever the case is, we can look here again on Kayak, and we just unselect the fully vaccinated option, and we can see that things look very differently. Only 68 countries are open to us without COVID testing and without quarantine. 76 countries are open in the event that we are willing to get a COVID test done. 26 countries require test and quarantine, and 57 countries are closed to us. Canada, Brazil, Finland, Australia, China, just to name a few, are completely closed to unvaccinated travelers, so there's no way for you to get in, not even if you would be willing to quarantine, get a negative test done. Nope. If you're unvaccinated, those countries are closed. What countries are open to unvaccinated travelers from the United States? We got Greenland, we got Mexico, we got most of the Caribbean open, Argentina, Chile, we got Scandinavia, we got Sweden, Norway, the United Kingdom, we got most of Central Europe open. But then there are countries that you can visit as an unvaccinated traveler, and we're talking about most of Latin America. We're talking about Colombia, Paraguay, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Belize. All these countries, they're open, but you do need a negative test. You can travel to Spain, Portugal, France, not a problem at all. You can travel to most of Europe, but you do need a test for France, Portugal, and Spain. Greece is fully open, no testing required for unvaccinated travelers. India, you can go to India, Bangladesh, but then there are countries that are fully open where no test, no quarantine is required. And those countries are Thailand and Vietnam. You can travel to those countries, not a problem, you can get in. Australia, unfortunately, still closed to unvaccinated travelers. Brazil also closed to unvaccinated travelers. We can see that more countries have opened up to unvaccinated travelers, but we're not seeing the same picture as we saw pre-pandemic yet. I also wanted to pass on to you a few thoughts that I believe are really important. You know, while you're able to get into those countries, I mean, on paper, those countries are open to unvaccinated travelers. Like Vietnam and Thailand are open. No testing, no quarantine, nothing required. On the downside, we see some countries, like for instance the Philippines, we see it in Malaysia and Indonesia. If you're unvaccinated, you cannot get on a plane. It's impossible. You may not be able to get on a ship in certain countries if you didn't get jabbed. That's just the reality. Australia, the same thing. You can't leave your country if you're unvaccinated. They want you to get the jab in order to use public transportation, which includes planes. So I've seen people that wanna get out of Australia. They're unjabbed. You know, countries are welcoming them, unvaccinated, but they cannot get out of the country because the government doesn't allow it. Big problem. The same in Canada too. I mean, it's very difficult to get out of Canada. Difficult, practically impossible to get out of Canada if you're unvaccinated. It just won't happen. Now, the good news is that European airlines, American airlines, so we're talking American Airlines, United, Delta, Frontier, all those airlines, they allow unvaccinated travelers. Things look very differently across the northern border in Canada, where you just cannot get on a plane unless you're jabbed. Europe, if you're unvaccinated, you can get on a plane, you can travel anywhere with a European airline, no problem. There are no restrictions in place for unvaccinated travelers other than perhaps needing a negative COVID test before they are allowed to board the plane. In South America, we can see that Argentina and Chile, countries that were closed for most of the pandemic, are now welcoming even unvaccinated travelers without quarantine, which is great. We haven't seen this picture from Argentina during the pandemic. I mean, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, those three countries were the most closed out of all of Latin America. Things have changed. Brazil, a country that was very open, is now saying, you know what, we don't want unvaccinated travelers in our country at all. Colombia, first, was really open. Then they were like, you know what, only if you are vaccinated, you can come into our country. Now, if you're unvaccinated, you can still come. We've really seen the picture changing for different countries. They've changed their stance, they've changed their requirements, but now from what we can see is that the world is opening up and more countries are welcoming fully vaccinated and unvaccinated travelers again. If you ask me, is this the final stage of the pandemic? I really believe so, because if countries already made the effort to get rid of the COVID passes, get rid of the mandates, you would think that they would continue this picture, because if they wanted to enforce tight control, they wouldn't easily give up on this control that they created over the past years. The control that's still in place in certain countries like China, Australia, Canada, that's still in place despite of all the countries that opened up, is something to worry about, because the world has opened, yet few countries have decided to remain in very tight control, which indicates to me that those countries have different intentions. They have plans that are not really disclosed to the general public, and that is something that you want to be aware of, I think. And if you're Canadian, Australian, and you can't get out of the country, you gotta apply a trick or two. What are your travel plans for the summer? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. I highly recommend that you grab a free copy of my latest ebook, The Nomad Elite Income Booster, your go-to guide for creating passive income streams using the internet. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos. Thank you for watching.